Kill your trading terminal, take a deep breath. I know exactly what you're re-staring at. A sea of suffocating red spot silver just went into freefall, smashing into the pavement at $74.64. A single-day plunge of over 4%. The fear from retail investors is palpable through the screen. The forums are overflowing with desperate wails and the usual cliches about Wall Street manipulation. But I am going to tell you a brutal truth if you are panicking right now. It is because you are looking at the wrong map and fighting a losing war. You aren't just reading the chart wrong. You are missing the most secretive, lethal legal anomaly in the history of American trade wars since the collapse of Bretton Woods in the 1970s. Tear your eyes away from New York. Look east. At the exact moment the COMEX in New York is panic, dumping silver at $74. The Shanghai Gold Exchange SEG is inhaling it. On their trading floor, the bid for silver is firmly planted at $82.11, having touched as high as $86 earlier today. In the laws of financial physics, this shouldn't exist. An $8 spread between New York and Shanghai. That isn't just an arbitrage gap. It's a crime scene. That $8 spread is the epitaph for the Western paper pricing system. It signals that physical metal is draining from Western vaults to Eastern warehouses at a speed unseen for half a century. Why have the global laws of arbitrage failed? Why is the physical metal commanding a massive premium while the paper price crashes? The answer isn't T on the candlesticks. It is buried deep within a document that 99.9% of Wall Street analysts have never bothered to read, the Federal Register. Here is the truth you need to know. While the mainstream financial media is obsessing over EV tariffs or debating the next hill in the semiconductor war, they completely missed the fine print on page 7 of Executive Order 14,346, Annex 2. It is this obscure line of legal text that orchestrated the chaos you see today. If you don't understand what Annex 2 did to the silver supply chain, you are going to foolishly hand over your position at the exact moment you should be backing up the truck. Let us dissect the document. When the President signed the Reciprocal Trade Act and invoked the International Emergency Economic Powers Act, the U.S. launched an indiscriminate attack on global supply chains. Everything entering the U.S., steel, aluminum, electronics, solar panels, if it was made in China, Mexico, or Europe, it got hit with punitive tariffs ranging from 10 to 100%. This was meant to punish foreign manufacturers, but it created a fatal structural deadlock for America. The United States is a geological silver desert. Our missile guidance systems, advanced medical devices, and sprawling solar farms devour thousands of tons of silver annually. Yet our domestic mining output is near zero. If the president had slapped tariffs on raw silver imports, American industry would have flatlined the next morning. So the bureaucrats designed Annex 2. Let me translate the legalese for you. Goods listed in Annex 2 are exempt from reciprocal tariffs. Specifically, precious metal-related items, HTS code 7106.9 1.1, silver bullion, 0% tariff. Do you realize what this implies? The U.S. government created the most violent incentive structure distortion in economic history. If you are a solar company importing finished panels from China, you pay a 100% tax. But if you import the raw silver bars to make those panels inside the U.S., you pay zero. This wasn't a regulatory oversight. It was a carefully engineered reshoring vacuum. The U.S. government has weaponized the silver market. They issued an ultimatum to global manufacturers. Move your factories here, and we give you tax, free metal, stay overseas, and we destroy your margins with tariffs. This is why factories are frantically relocating to Texas and Ohio. This is why North American demand for physical silver is about to go vertical. And right at this critical juncture, China decided to lock the gate. You need to understand the timing. Just 1 week ago, on the 1st of January 2026, China officially enacted strategic resource export controls. Beijing knows exactly what Washington is doing. They know the U.S. is desperate for silver to rebuild the hollowed-out shell of its industrial base, so they are strangling the supply. That massive $8 premium in Shanghai isn't a bubble. It's the sound of the door slamming shut. China would rather pay $86 to keep the metal at home than let America loot their resources for $74. This leads to the question that is confusing you. If the shortage is so real, why did the price crash 4% today? Wake up. This is a textbook shakeout. The CME Group just hiked margin requirements on silver futures yesterday. That is no coincidence. Raising the cost of holding leveraged positions has one purpose: to wash out the weak hands. This is a liquidity slaughter. Wall Street smashed the paper price down to $74 to trigger your stop. Loss orders to make you surrender your chips in panic. But open your eyes and see who is on the other side of the trade. The physical vaults in Shanghai are using this discount to drain Western liquidity dry. We have created a tax-free demand black hole in the U.S. while China has erected a supply wall. Trapped in the middle is a paper price that is lying about the true value of the asset. To understand why the silver squeeze of 2026 will be devastating, you have to stop thinking like a coin collector. You have to start thinking like the CFO of a manufacturing giant. Imagine you are the CEO of a major solar panel company. For the last 20 years, you enjoyed cheap labor and efficient supply chains in Southeast Asia, but in 2025, the geopolitical tectonic plates shifted beneath your feet. The 2nd of April, 2025, Executive Order 14,257 signed. The 5th of September, 2025, Executive Order 14,346 lands. The 1st of January, 2026. Full enforcement begins. Suddenly, your business model of importing finished panels is a dead end. Faced with a tariff wall of 50% plus, you have two choices, a bankruptcy, or B, move the factory to America. When you choose B, you fall into a bigger trap. To make solar panels, you need silver paste, tons of it. The photovoltaic industry currently consumes nearly 20% of the global annual silver supply. When you move your factory to the US to avoid taxes, you must source raw silver from within the US right now. This is where you hit the ruthless wall of mathematics. According to the latest USGS data, the US mines less than 1,000 metric tons of silver annually. But American electronics, solar, and medical industries devour nearly 8,000 metric tons. We produce 1K, we eat 8K. That is a 7,000-ton annual deficit. In the past, this wasn't a problem. We just imported it. But now, even though the executive order left a zero-tariff backdoor for raw silver, the world isn't playing along. We are seeing a phenomenon called resource nationalism. Mexico, Peru, China, the nations that actually have the silver, are hoarding. They want to build their own panels, their own missiles. They refuse to ship precious raw materials cheaply to support America, industrialization. The flashpoint of the dual crisis, this is the situation we face. Mandatory factory reshoring is causing domestic demand to skyrocket exponentially, while export controls are causing global supply to contract sharply. There is a technical economic term for this, biflation. It means we are simultaneously witnessing a deflationary collapse in importer margins and hyperinflation in the raw materials needed for domestic production. The cost of solar panels is soaring. The COGS, cost of goods sold, for electric vehicles is spiraling out of control. This is classic cost-push inflation. Historically, what is the best hedge against this type of inflation? Silver. But this time, silver isn't just a safe haven for investors. It is a lifeline for industrial titans. Tesla, Samsung, First Solar, these giants aren't panicking about the price. They are panicking about availability. If they don't lock down physical metal today, their assembly lines stop tomorrow. That is why the $74 price is a massive deception. The paper silver market is acting, staring at Fed interest rates, while the physical market is screaming at empty warehouses. COMEX registered stocks, the silver actually available for delivery, have plunged to historic lows, and count on technology to save us. For years, the theory of thrifting suggested manufacturers would reduce silver usage. But in 2025, with the widespread adoption of TOPCon and HJT heterojunction, battery technologies, we hit the limits of physics. To maintain high efficiency, these new technologies require more silver than ever before. At the exact moment EO 14,346 forces factories home, technology is demanding more metal. This isn't just a squeeze. It's a national-level industrial accounting disaster. The U.S. government naively thought that by exempting bullion from tariffs, the metal would automatically flow to America. They were wrong. At $74, miners have no incentive to fill this bottomless pit. The Chinese are willing to pay $86 to keep the silver. This implies only one outcome can break the deadlock: repricing. Something has to give. The price must rise to a level that can smash through export bans and incentivize mines to produce at all costs. We aren't talking about a rise to $80 or $100. We are witnessing the total repricing of silver as a strategic industrial metal. The loophole is in the law, but the explosion will happen in the market. It is the perfect storm. The only tax-exempt asset is also the biggest beneficiary of the inflation triggered by the trade war. When solar factories in Texas try to source silver that simply doesn't exist, you will thank God for this moment, staring at a blood-red screen, because it is your last ticket onto the ark. Do you hear that? That is the final groan of the dam before it bursts. The trap is set. The prey is netted. Foundations are being poured, vaults are being emptied, and the price, that final thread holding up the global financial illusion, is about to snap. If you think this crisis is just about supply chains or industrial vacuums, you are still underestimating the cruelty of this game. Executive Order 14,346 did just shatter the old order of the silver market. It is a dagger aimed at the heart of the bond market. We are about to witness the third pillar of the crisis, and the most lethal one, the currency plague. We need to talk about your money, because the secret Washington wants to keep from you is this: The bill for this trade war will ultimately be paid by the burning dollar in your pocket. The Fed's checkmate and the ghost of inflation tariffs are fundamentally taxes. This is Economics 101. When the Iron Curtain of the Reciprocal Trade Act fell in late 2025, the government effectively levied a ubiquitous sales tax on the global supply chain. When a U.S. company is forced to pay a 50% tariff on imported Asian electronic components, do you think they will benevolently eat that cost? Number, they will transfer it to you at light speed. This is cost push inflation right now in January 2026. Look around you. The Consumer Price Index, CPI, is no longer climbing gently. It is spiraling. Prices for cars, appliances, and even drywall are jumping by the week. In the past, the Federal Reserve had a standard playbook for this. Inflation rises, hike rates, tighten money supply, cool the economy. But this time, Powell and his successors find themselves in the electric chair. They cannot raise rates. This is the Fed trap. Think about the logic of this new trade policy. The government's goal is to force manufacturing reshoring, to encourage companies to build factories on a soil, to build massive solar plants in the wastelands of Texas or Ohio. What do companies need? They need cheap capital. They need low interest loans. If the Fed hikes rates to 10% Volcker style to fight tariff-induced inflation, what happens? They will single-handedly strangle the manufacturing boom the president is trying to create. Those factories would go bankrupt before the first concrete is poured due to soaring interest costs. The Fed is checkmated. They are forced to maintain artificially low rates to feed reindustrialization, while helplessly watching inflation rage due to tariff barriers. This constitutes the textbook definition of financial repression. It means that as long as your money sits in a savings account, it is bleeding value every second. Through this mechanism, the government is essentially sacrificing your purchasing power to finance this expensive trade war. The two-tier world and the great wealth. This brings us back to the core mystery, the silver exemption. Why did the government leave an escape hatch specifically for gold and silver while indiscriminately attacking all other imports? Why scuttle the ship but painstakingly build this one specific lifeboat? Because they aren't, you stupid. The architects of this policy know perfectly well that the byproduct of a trade war is currency devaluation. They know that by physically walling off cheap foreign goods, they are signing a warrant for domestic hyperinflation. So, they had to let real money, hard assets, flow into the country, unimpeded. The exemption for silver isn't just an industrial subsidy. It is a silent confession by the U.S. government. They are admitting the dollar will lose purchasing power against hard assets. Consequently, a brutal two-tier class system has been born. Tier 1, the consumer class, the general public. You pay higher prices for bread, cars, and batteries. You hold paper currency that melts like ice in the sun. Tier 2, the asset class, the smart money. You hold the legally exempted goods, gold and silver. As the fiat system crumbles, these assets are pricing. This is the largest wealth transfer of our generation, and the tragedy is that most people are on the wrong side of the trade. While the average person complains about egg prices at the supermarket, the vultures on Wall Street are quietly stripping the COMEX warehouses bare. Look at the data. It doesn't lie. Gold is trading at $4,435. It is doing what it has done for thousands of years, sniffing out inflation and taking flight. But silver is still at $74. The gold to silver ratio is currently hovering around 60 to 1. History tells us that during periods where high inflation meets industrial shortages, this ratio collapses to 40 to 1 or even 30 to 1. This means that even if gold stays flat, which is impossible, silver must double just to fix this valuation mismatch. We are witnessing a rare financial anomaly, the fusion of a safe haven asset and a critical industrial asset. Silver is the only thing that protects you from inflation and lets you profit from the frantic demand of the manufacturing renaissance. It is the only asset in the world legally immune to the trade war causing the inflation. It is a perfect feedback loop from hell. Higher tariffs mean higher inflation. Higher inflation drives capital into precious metals. More capital buying silver makes it harder for industry to get raw materials. Raw material shortages send prices spiraling out of control. The collapse of the paper lie and the certainty of $147. So, where does this storm take us? If factories are desperate, if the Fed is paralyzed, and if the vaults are empty, what is the real price of silver in 2026? Forget $74. That is just a few pixels on a NYMEX screen. It is a piece of paper promising the delivery of silver that does not exist. For decades, bullion banks controlled pricing by selling naked shorts. They dared to sell millions of ounces of paper silver to suppress the price because they bet that buyers only wanted cash settlements, not the heavy metal itself. But Executive Order 14,346 changed the underlying rules of the game. The buyers have changed. It is no longer hedge fund managers looking for a quick flip entering the market. It is procurement chiefs from Tesla, First, Solar, Samsung, and Raytheon. They don't want cash. You can T-stuff dollars into a missile guidance head, and you can T-build solar panels with bank transfer records. They want physical bars. When these giants demand delivery and the exchange opens the vault doors to reveal nothing but dust, that terrifying phrase will appear force majeure. This is the moment the market snaps. In fact, the cracks are already visible. That $8 premium in Shanghai is the sound of the first fracture. Shanghai is trading at $86 because that reflects the true clearing price of physical metal. New York is stuck at $74, only because banks are desperately trying to cover their shorts one last time before the default. But this charade cannot last. Arbitrage is the gravity of the financial world. If silver is $12 cheaper in New York than in Shanghai, greedy traders will buy every ounce in New York and air. Freight it to Shanghai. This will instantly drain Western strategic reserves. To stop the bleeding, the U.S. paper price must rise to match China. This isn't a choice. It is a mathematical inevitability. Where is the price target? Let us look at the gold to silver ratio. Gold price $4,435. Current ratio 60 to 1. Conservative target, if the ratio returns to the historical norm for supply crises. 40 to 1, silver rates to $110. Super cycle target, we are in a manufacturing super. Cycle driven by tariff exemptions. If the ratio compresses to the 30 to 1 seen in previous bull markets, we are looking at $147 per ounce. If a true squeeze happens, where banks are forced to buy at any price to avoid bankruptcy, the chart 1T be a curve. It will be a vertical line. The final verdict, this isn't just investment advice. This is the final verdict on Executive Order 14,346. The Trump administration didn't just leave a loophole in the law. They set a brilliant trap. They knew that exempting silver from tariffs would push massive industrial demand into an already depleted market. They knew this would shatter the paper price suppression mechanism. Effectively, they gave you a golden ticket to escape the dollar collapse and board the ark. But the ticket is only valid before prices converge. Right now, at this very moment, you can still buy physical silver near that fake paper price. You still have a chance to get in before New York wakes up from its hangover and realizes what has already happened in Shanghai. But this window is closing by the second, the 4% crash you see on your screen. It isn't a collapse, it is the final shakeout. It is the institutions trying to buck you off the ride before they lock the doors. They want your chips, they want you to panic sell, so they can cover their fatal short positions cheaply. Do not give them your chips. The executive order is signed, the factories are retooling, the inflation tiger is out of the cage, and silver is about to return to its true glory. The only question left is, when the music stops, will you be holding burning paper or real metal? Subscribe now, there is only one truth.